Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Right now, it is about hoops, and if you wanted proof that hoop season is coming fast and furious, look no further than the fact that on Monday, the first AP Top 25 is out. What we're going to do over the next couple minutes, I am going to give you the teams that I believe are overrated, that I believe are underrated. If you want to drop your comments in the comment section, we'll get to them at the end of this segment. But before we get to it, I do want to, first of all, I'm just going to give you the top 10. I'm not going to go every team, top 25. But the top 10 I do think is interesting. Then we'll get to, of course, the teams that I believe are overrated and underrated. So here are the top 10 according to the AP. Kansas is at number 1. Alabama's at number 2. UConn at 3. Houston at 4. Iowa State at 5. Gonzaga at 6. Duke 7. Baylor 8. North Carolina 9. Arizona 10. Why is that top 20? Why is that top 10 interesting? Some of you may be asking, well, how about this? It is because here is how it compares to the final top 10 that I put out after the NBA draft deadline in late May, early June. I had Bama 1, Kansas 2. I had UConn 3. I had Houston 4, Iowa State 5, Gonzaga 6, Baylor 7, North Carolina 8, Duke 9, Arizona 10. That is interesting because it is quite literally the same top 10. So I don't know if all the AP voters are like, dude, this Torres guy knows his stuff. I got to go see where who he has ranked and where he has them ranked because this guy never misses. But the same top 10, I actually do think, just for some context as we get into overrated, underrated, I should very quickly give 15 or 11 through 25. 11 is Auburn, 12 is Tennessee, 13 is A&M, 14 is Purdue, 15 is Creighton, 16 Arkansas, 17 Indiana, 18 Marquette, 19 Texas, 20 Cincinnati, 21 Florida, 22 UCLA, 23 Kentucky, 24 Ole Miss, 25 Rutgers. I think the thing that stands out there, a lot of SEC representation, not just Kentucky, not just Tennessee, not just Bama, but some teams that we're not used to seeing. Remember, Texas, of course, is an SEC team now, Florida in the top 25, and oh, by the way, on top of that, Ole Miss with Chris Beard in year 2 is in the top 25 as well. So that's the top 25. Now what I want to do, because you know Torres has takes on everything. Let's get to some teams that I believe are both overrated and underrated and where I would have them or why I think they're frankly overrated, underrated. Okay. So the first team that I believe is actually underrated. Some of you are going to laugh, but it's the number 2 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. And some of you say, Torres, what are you talking about? What do you mean Alabama's ranked number 2? They're number 2 and they're underrated? Yeah, they are. I think Alabama should be the number 1 team in the country. Listen, I can't sit here and say that it's no debate, but let's talk about this team for half a second. Made a Final Four a year ago. Never forget. They actually played UConn tougher in the Final Four than Purdue did in the national championship game. Mark Sears is back. SEC preseason player of the year. Grant Nelson is back. Jaron Stevenson is back. Cliff Amayori, who I can never get his name right. Big Cliff, if you're watching, I apologize. You then added other guys in the portal besides Big Cliff. You added Houston Millett from Pepperdine. You added a couple other guys, Chris Youngblood from South Florida. You added Aiden Holloway from Auburn. And so what I say about Alabama, and I mean it, by the way, 4 really good high school players as well. They're like Noah's Ark. They got 2 of everything on this team. And when I look at this team, I actually think that's going to be the most interesting question about them. How does Nate Oates keep all these guys happy? Because it's one thing to recruit guys in April and May and make them promises. And I don't mean that in a negative way. But when you get on the court, there's only 5 guys that can play at a time. You know Mark Sears is going to play a lot. You know Cliff is going to play a lot. You know Grant Nelson, guys like that, Jaron Stevenson. How do you find guys room for everybody else? But to me, this is the best team on paper, 2 deep at basically every spot. They didn't have rim protection last year. They do. They are, in my opinion, the favorite to win the national championship. Really, really, really like Alabama. Let's get to the first overrated team on my list. That's at number 13, the Texas A&M Aggies. Okay. So first of all, everyone says, "Oh, Torres, you're a SEC homer. You just never say anything bad about these SEC teams." Let me say this about A&M. Okay. Buzz Williams, great at what he does. Not here to criticize the guy. He's won everywhere he went. But this is kind of the third year in a row with this core. And I'm trying to think of an example in life. You ever just go through the same thing over and over and over, and you kind of get tired of it, and you're kind of like, I need to see it to believe it? Well, this A&M team, the last 2 years, has been really hyped with largely the same core. 2 years ago, they were right on the fringes of the top 25, started 8-5. And they, I want to welcome a new sponsor to the Aaron Torres pod, Blue Chew. Fellas, remember back in the day when you were always ready to go? Well, things change. You got a lot on your mind. Your football team isn't very good. Well, here's the good news. That's where Blue Chew comes in. Blue Chew is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in chewable form. To get started, it's so easy. Just go to bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. The best part, it's all done online. No awkward trip to the doctors, no waiting at the pharmacy, no stink eyes, no raised eyebrows, nothing. Thing is, though, I know a lot of you are probably wondering, Torres, does it actually work? Do you think I need to try it? Well, here's the deal. Try it for a month for free, and I think there will be no turning back, all right? You'll love it. Your partner is going to love it. Your football team may stink, but you'll be rocking like the 85 Bears between the sheets. So go ahead, try it out. And here is the great news. We have a special offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. You can try Blue Chew for free when you use the code Torres at checkout. All you got to do is pay $5 in shipping. Go to bluechew.com, use promo code Torres at checkout. You get Blue Chew for free for a free month, and you only have to pay $5 shipping. Again, visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. Thank you to Blue Chew for sponsoring the Aaron Torres podcast. They had a good back half of the season, big SEC play, NCAA tournament, all that good stuff. But they don't, they started 8-5. They struggled out of the gate. Last year, they were actually ranked 15th with, again, largely the same group of players. Guess what ended up happening? Started 9-4, basically won 0 meaningful out-of-conference games, and really had to rally once SEC play started. So I get the hype. I get why other people have them in the top 25. I'm just not going to put them there because at some point I need to see it early in the season. The AP poll is not supposed to be, and the AT poll too, the one that I do, is not supposed to be just who is the best, who's going to be the best by the end of the year. It's who's the best right now. And again, A&M has struggled out of the gate. I'll believe it when I see it. I do not have A&M in my top 25 to start. Let's keep it going. Underrated team in college hoops. Let's go all the way down to the 20s. There's actually 2 teams in the 20s, but let's start with number 22, the UCLA Bruins. Okay. So UCLA coming off a very rare down year for Mick Cronin. Listen, Mick Cronin has quietly been really good at UCLA. Made the Final Four in year 1 or year 2. Year 1 was the year the tournament was canceled. Year 2 makes a Final Four. Year 3 makes a Sweet 16 where if Caleb Love doesn't go off, they're going to the Elite 8. And then year 4 makes another Sweet 16 where if Gonzaga doesn't make a miracle shot at the end, they're going to the Elite 8 to play the UConn Huskies. By the way, that was the year their best player, Jalen Clark, got hurt late in the season. I guess he was the second best player, but you get the point. Bottom line is Mick Cronin has been great until last year. And if you remember last year, he lost most of his roster, went heavy on international players, and it just didn't work. And I'm not going to blame him and I'm not going to criticize him because 1, he's basically won every single year for about 15 years in a row. So I'll give him an off year. But 2, went heavy international. And I think the important thing to note on the international guys, a lot of them didn't get to campus until late. A lot of them, were in a situation where they basically didn't speak, it was an adjustment. Didn't speak the language, got to campus late. Remember, UCLA is on the quarter system. So literally some of them did not get there until September. Late start this year. Cronin went heavy in the portal. By the way, I've heard through the years, UCLA, their admissions makes it harder to take portal guys. I don't know whose palms Mick Cronin had to grease to get things going, but listen, Kobe Johnson from USC, William Kyle from South Dakota State, the big kid from Oregon State who everybody's raving about, Dominic Harris from Gonzaga, or he started at Gonzaga, excuse me, and then from there went to Loyola Marymount. I could go on, but this is a really talented team. I would argue, and I might argue, they might be the best team in the new look Big Ten. UCLA, to me, is underrated. Let's go back to overrated. I don't get this one. This is a team that's coming in at number 15 overall, Creighton Blue Jays. And listen, Doug McDermott. Greg McDermott is the coach. Doug McDermott is his son, plays in the NBA. Greg McDermott's done an unbelievable job at Creighton, okay? But you go back to last year, they weren't very deep. They were very reliant on Baylor Shireman, who's now playing in the NBA. And you fast forward, they didn't have a lot around him besides Shireman and Ryan Kalkbrenner. Kalkbrenner's back. I get it. I just don't love a lot of the other pieces that have been brought in, and I don't see the difference makers that Creighton has had in recent years. Listen, I know guys, some of these guys weren't there last year, but like obviously Ryan Nembhard's a difference maker, right? He goes to Gonzaga, they immediately go to the Sweet 16. Well, you lose Baylor Shireman, you lose Trey Alexander, who is now playing in the NBA as well with the Denver Nuggets, and I just don't see the talent on this roster that everybody else does. Now, Ryan Kalkbrenner's really good, but they bring in Pop Isaacs from Texas Tech. He's coming off major surgery. Transparently, I'm not going to get into it, but you can look it up. There were some major off the court issues while he was at Texas Tech. He was eventually, kind of allowed back with the team. But I can tell you, there were certain people at Creighton that were not thrilled to bring this guy in. Not saying he's a bad kid. I'm just telling you what's out there. And I know for a fact that there was a little bit of pushback. So Creighton, look, Big East, I think, is kind of top heavy with UConn and Marquette. One other team that is not ranked, we'll get to in a minute. But I don't love the Creighton Blue Jays. And to me, I think they are overrated. Let's go back to underrated. Let's go back to the 20s, the Kentucky Wildcats. And listen, we have done so much Kentucky coverage, from the coaching search to 12 new players on this roster. Maybe somebody from the team on the show in the coming days. We can discuss that. But I've made my argument for Kentucky all fall long. Okay. This is a team that, remember, 0 returning players, but of the players that they got out of the portal, 4 guys who averaged double figures in major college basketball: Jackson Robinson at BYU, Andrew Carr at Wake Forest, Kirk Risa at West Virginia, and Otega Owe at Oklahoma. They added the best defensive guard in the portal, Lamont Butler, who Mark Pope has literally said is ruining practice because he's so good defensively they can't run offense when he's on the court playing defense. Amari Williams, who Mark Pope believes could be the best defensive big in the SEC, is on that roster. Kobe Brea, statistically the best three-point shooter in college basketball last year, they got out of the portal as well. By the way, Kobe Brea chose Kentucky over offers from Duke, Carolina, Kansas, and UConn. So that's your final 5. You're pretty good. I don't understand. I'll look at my poll really quick. I think my final top 25, I had them at like 13, 14. I don't think this is the 8th best team in the SEC. I don't think that they're anything other than like a top 15 team that I believe is going to compete at the top of the SEC. I don't think they're better than Bama. I wouldn't put them ahead of Arkansas, maybe Auburn, but I do think this is a much an underrated team that probably isn't getting the credit they deserve. Really quickly, a couple more underrated and overrated teams. Overrated, I'll say Texas. Listen, I like Rodney Terry, but this was a team that last year had plenty of talent. And you go back and you look, they were good in a relatively soft out of conference. They get into league play in the Big 12 last year, which was really tough. They struggled. At one point, they were 6-8. Remember where were they playing? UCF, where he was complaining about the horns down. And so now you're going into another bear of a league in the SEC with all these other great teams. Again, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Auburn. Ole Miss is ranked. Florida's ranked. I just think it's going to be really, really, really tough. So I like their pieces. Jordan Pope is a kid. I remember seeing him like as a sophomore in high school being like, this kid's really good. Played at Oregon State. I thought he was one of the more underrated players in the portal. He was like one of my top 10 guys in the portal. They had Tremont Mark from Arkansas. Arkansas fans will remember that name. But to me, I actually do believe that Texas is a little bit overrated in that top 25. One more underrated team. And they're so underrated. They did not make they did not even make the poll in the top 25. I'm stunned by this. St. John's Red Storm. My boy Big Rick Energy, Rick Pitino, showing up at Big Blue Madness last week in a Kentucky polo. Wish we had time to talk about it. By the way, Pitino, you couldn't have done that on like a Tuesday so we could have talked about it on the show. But the bottom line is, look, you look at this team. First of all, they should have made the tournament last year. We've discussed it. They played UConn tougher in March than literally anybody, including the 6 teams they played in the Big Ten in the NCAA tournament. Played them tougher than Bama. Played them tougher than Purdue. They should have been in the tournament. They were not. They had Kadari Richmond out of the portal. Listen, I think Kadari Richmond could mess around and be Big East Player of the Year, especially in that system with Rick Pitino. They're going to be good defensively. They have good shooting. I think Simeon Wilshire, the sophomore, is going to take a big step up. I had them at like 17 or 18 in my final poll. Stunned that they are not ranked. And that is a team that I would have had in my top 25. Looking really quick, it looks like they came in at number 27 as a team that just missed. Really quickly, a couple other teams, we just be quick on this, but teams that I either like, don't like, or just about right. I said everybody in the top 10 was my top 10, so no complaints there. Purdue fans who think that I hate them, I actually think Purdue's maybe a little bit low at 14. I had them at 11. Listen, with the returnees that they have 2 really good bigs to replace Zach Edey, Daniel Jacobson, who's a freshman, Will Berg, who's been in the program. I think they might, I don't want to say pick up right where they left off, but I wouldn't be stunned if they end up winning the Big Ten. So I think they're a little underrated at 14. Arkansas, I would have a spot or 2 higher. Listen, I love the Arkansas roster that Calipari's put together. He's got to win, but he's got 3 dudes that were with him at Kentucky. He's got older players that he got out of the portal. I think they have a chance to be really good. I would probably say on paper, I like them as the second best team in the SEC outside of Alabama. And then other than that, Cincinnati ranked at number 20. I don't have them ranked. I'm kind of in show me mode with Wes Miller. He's been there for a few years now. Let's see if he can get over the hump. That Ole Miss thing is very interesting. They added some really nice pieces out of the portal in addition to a couple key returnees. Jamin Brakefield is one of them. Rutgers at 25, I think, is too high. I get it. You have 2 really high-profile freshmen in Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, but I just don't see it. Couple unranked teams. Let's stay in the Big Ten. I don't understand. Eric Musselman's USC Trojans, I don't think are getting enough love. Saw them practice over the summer. Listen, it was July. I think even Coach Muss would tell you they had a long way to go. But Coach Muss, and I've seen people pick them 14th, 15th, 16th in the Big Ten. Coach Muss don't finish in 14th, 15th place, okay? Desmond Claude from Xavier, by the way, originally from New Haven, Connecticut, so I got to stick up for my CT guys. But I really like Desmond Claude, really like that roster that Muss has put together. I think they're probably the 3rd or 4th best team in the Big Ten going into this year. Wouldn't have them ahead of Indiana, wouldn't have them ahead of UCLA, would not have them ahead of who's the other one? Purdue, but do like where they're at. And that's really it. That's really it from the top 25. Couple notes. UK Tilde says UK rocks. I agree with that. And oh, by the way, Johnny says NCAA headquarters in Connecticut. Strange. Johnny, I love you, buddy. NCAA headquarters are in Indianapolis. Now, ESPN's headquarters are in Connecticut, but it is worth noting ESPN does not broadcast Big East basketball. Fox, NBC, I think they have one other partner due this year. So Connecticut has nothing to do with it, but UConn coming in at number 3.